Welcome to the Sports Circus. How do you not love that music? I'm Thom Brennman.
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. Today's show is brought to you by UppercutChops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all-natural USDA Prime Angus and Wagyu steaks and chops. Wait till you see their best-in-class New York steaks, filet mignons, and of course, the king of all, the cowboy and tomahawk ribeyes. Even the gourmet Angus and Wagyu burgers will blow you away. They're the best you've ever had, guaranteed. For more information, contact UppercutChops.com at 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. Or find out what's for dinner at UppercutChops.com. All right, a big welcome in everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates from coast to coast. Magic 97.9 FM right here in Las Vegas, right around the corner from the downtown Fremont Street Experience in Las Vegas. Of course, our flag station over in Southern California, that's NBC News, CNBC Financial, KCAA. Thanks for joining us also on hotel television in over 500,000 rooms. Geez, we're gaining about 4.8 million impressions per hour. That's quite a few for all you companies out there that are looking for a little bit of advertising, needless to say, right? A shameless plug for the Sports Circus. But nonetheless, also a big welcome in to everybody on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Wow Cable, and everybody streaming on social. We're here with the great Thom Brennman, 30 years in baseball and football and whatever. You've called it all. You should be a broadcasting Hall of Fame guy if you're not already. Thom, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm still waiting to get in my high school Hall of Fame, Sal, so it might be a little while. I don't know about any other Hall of Fame, but I've been fortunate and blessed to do it for a long, long time. Haven't done it for the last year and a half, 2 years, and miss it. But, you got to keep moving on and plugging along and rolling along. Hope you're doing well.
Who knows, Thom? Maybe you'll become a sidekick for the Sports Circus, eh? You never know. You never know. Listen, stranger things have happened. I wasn't even supposed to do what I do. I fell into this. And I think a lot of people sort of either fall into it. Then somebody once told me, you'll find your radio voice. I'm like, what in the hell is that? It took me 6 months to figure out what the heck that was. Did you find that somebody told you about a radio voice at some point?
No, I mean, as you know, and maybe some of the people that are watching or listening might know, I grew up around it. My father is a Hall of Fame broadcaster, the Baseball Hall of Fame, 47 years, his voice of the Cincinnati Reds. He used to announce, the NCAA Final Four for CBS Radio every single year. College basketball, did the old ABA going way back to when he first got started with Virginia Squires. I grew up around it a little bit. It's interesting, though, that you say about the voice thing, because even after I'd had a chance to start getting on the air and doing some pretty big events and doing Major League Baseball in Chicago. And, I found that I was always talking up, like this all the time. Well, you can't do that all the time. And it took me a long time to find not so much the voice, but more just the volume, the tone. That, you can get really revved up on big all the time. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the funny thing is when I first had a mic put in front of me some years ago, it was a ESPN studio over in Los Angeles on KLAA. And so I filled in for somebody that was trying to promote a product. And they said, well, geez, that went pretty well. Why don't you come back tomorrow? And I said, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, but okay. I happened to be in town from Las Vegas. So I went back into the studio. It worked out well because I wasn't saying, I wasn't using the filler words where you lose your audience. And, Thom, a lot of people seem to tune out once they hear a series of filler words. And I hear it all the time on television. And I scratch my head saying, have these people been trained? Are they listening to themselves more importantly?
The funny part that you say that about is I have a daughter who is in college, freshman in college, and I still have a son who's in high school. And whenever you're speaking to their friends in this generation, and I'm not one of these old guys that's sitting around, because there are a lot of things when you and I were their age that we probably did that our parents and grandparents are rolling their eyes and, oh, geez, But one of them and one of the words is like. Everything is like. We went over to the store, and I'll interrupt them. And I used to, when I was driving my daughter and her friends, every time one of them would say that word, and from here to 3.5 miles to our local high school, I would go, every time one of them would say that word. And of course, my daughter was mortified. Her friends thought it was awesome. And so she's still doing it, but I'm trying to keep both of them from falling in love with that word. I fell into that pattern, not on television, but since I've been out of it the last year or two of, don't know why, just catch myself saying it. And I had somebody just pointed out to me about 3 months ago, you're saying too much. I thought, wow, okay. And sure enough, they were right.
A lot of people use filler words, filler phrases, and you'll hear people use basically this and basically that. Folks, if you're listening to this, listen to yourself. Listen to yourself, and you'll say, wow, I didn't realize I did that. And Thom, nowadays, we have 1.5 million podcasts out there, whatever. Everybody is a star until they listen to themselves. Then they're mortified by listening to themselves because they say, wow, I sound awful. It's not because their voice is awful. It's because their cadence is off. They don't have that sing song. They don't have the ability to pause for a moment, gather a thought, and then carry on. So broadcasting is a very, very cerebral thing. Wouldn't you agree?
Very much. I think that one of the things that happens is if I'd get off the air doing a 3-hour baseball game or an NFL game takes 3 hours, mentally, you are just drained. Now, look, I'm not for a second comparing that kind of occupation for people who are really working for a living, people that are driving a truck from coast to coast, or people that are out doing landscaping work all day long in the heat and the cold, wherever you might live, and, shoveling driveways of snow, and any number of occupations, people that climb up on a roof to put on a new roof on a house. I mean, it's not like that, but you're right. From a mental standpoint, the focus to try to not fall into patterns like you're talking about, saying, or like, or whatever the term might be, trying to find 8, 9, 10 ways to say the same thing, trying not to stumble over words, trying not to go too long, trying to be. And it is a very draining mental occupation, whether it's doing a podcast like you're doing, and making sure you're prepared and making sure you're ready and having to read a lot and get prepared and all those kinds of things, the kind of questions you want to ask people. I've spent so much time since I started this podcast that I do. It's called Dialed In with Thom Brennman. You can find it anywhere, Apple, Spotify, I believe, network. But the preparation for it, there's a lot of reading involved, as you know. So from a mental standpoint, it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of focus for sure.
It does. And being on the radio and television side of it, it's remarkably different than just recording a show as a, air quote, podcast. Because let's face it, if you're regulated by the FCC, folks, it's a legit show. It is what it is. Now, Joe Rogan does a legit show. He is at the top 1% of 1% of 1%. He's the king of the mountain when it comes to the podcast world. But most people that are involved in that podcast world are trying to get their word out, which I think is a wonderful thing. But the reality is that you're not regulated by the FCC. Plus, you can go in and fix it in the mix. We don't fix anything in the mix. We take this raw video feed and we will send it out to all of our television outlets all the audio is actually stripped from that television feed or from that video feed and sent out to all of our radio affiliates as well. And we'll stream it live or we'll restream it, etc. So it looks the same as just as we're doing right now, but we don't fix anything in the mix. And folks, if you're thinking about doing your own show, I think that's wonderful. But remember, there's a difference between real radio and television and make believe. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just telling it like it is. Not everybody seems to believe that, well, if you're doing a podcast, listen, it's as real as you want it to be. Just remember, if you're regulated by the FCC, now it's real because the fines are real.
Well, and you throw on top, you're 100% correct, Sal. And I from interviews that I've heard, read with different people, whether they're people who are in film, motion pictures, that kind of thing, they will tell you that there is nothing like live television or live radio because it's right there for the world to see, regulated, yes. But now all of a sudden you throw in being monitored, if you will, social media, and some of the things that can be said and go out over the air. It adds another layer, certainly, of the pressure involved of that.
Absolutely. And in our next segment, I want to dig a little deeper into that. But the funny thing is, folks, look, we have to pay bills too. We have to go to break just like everybody else. Lots to think about here with the great Thom Brennman. Folks, don't go anywhere. Lots more to come here on the Sports Circus. Don't go anywhere. I'm your Ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime, nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it on here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus TheSportsCircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Do you know someone with a drug or alcohol problem? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything. Stop the drug and alcohol nightmare. Are drug and alcohol problems hitting you too close to home? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything.
800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. That's 800-831-1560.
Do you own a timeshare? Well, face the facts. You made a mistake. You made a bad purchase. A timeshare is not an investment. It's a money pit that continues forever. If you use your timeshare, that's great. But if you don't and you want to legally get out of your contract, call my friends right now at the Timeshare Exit Hotline. They're an experienced team of lawyers who help good people like you get out of a timeshare contract that they just don't want. Don't throw away your money on maintenance fees. Use it for things you really want. We can help you end your timeshare contract and stop the money drain immediately. If you're ready to move on with your timeshare, call our team right now.
Cancel your timeshare now with a free call. 800-298-3173. 800-298-3173. 800-298-3173. That's 800-298-3173.
If you have diabetes, listen up. If you have insurance, you can qualify for a continuous glucose monitor. With a CGM, you can continuously track your levels and trends and spend more time in range, significantly lowering your A1C. More importantly, a CGM eliminates the one thing most people with diabetes hate: painful finger sticks. Order your new continuous glucose monitor today. If you use insulin and if you've seen your diabetes care provider within the last 6 months, you may qualify for your own CGM right now. We'll do all the insurance paperwork and deliver your new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost to you. Medicare and most insurances will cover your CGM, so don't wait. Have your insurance handy and call the Aptiva Medical CGM Health Hotline right now.
800-320-2751. 800-320-2751. 800-320-2751. 800-321-2751. That's 800-320-2751.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Urlacher. Welcome back to the Sports Circus.
Here we go. Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. That stands for All Ages Media Programming, in case you're keeping score. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. This segment brought to you in part by Curry Leaf, flavors of India, fine Indian cuisine. Folks, if you're in Las Vegas, planning to come to Las Vegas, everybody listening in Southern California, when you're driving on over, because this is Las Vegas, California, I think everybody knows that. Make sure you stop at 5025 South Fort Apache Road at the intersection of Tropicana, just about 10 minutes west of the famous Vegas Strip. There you will find Curry Leaf. Folks, it's gourmet food at normal rates. It is phenomenal. Things that you've never had at your favorite Indian restaurant. Tandoori salmon. You've had tandoori chicken, maybe not tandoori salmon. Oh my, the list goes on and on. That's one of my favorites. I have to mention it. Nonetheless, check out the menu at curryleafvegas.com, curryleafvegas.com, or make your reservation for dinner or lunch at 702-527-7977, 702-527-7977, 702-527-7977. That's Curry Leaf right here in Las Vegas. Right. And a big welcome back to everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates from coast to coast, including our friends over in Honolulu on CBS Sports 1500 KHKA. That's home of the 49ers, the San Francisco Giants, and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Big hello to our friends over at our flag station, NBC News, CNBC Financial, KCAA in sunny Southern California, KIOF 97.9 FM right here in Las Vegas. Thanks for tuning in, as well as 107.1 The River over in Natchez, Mississippi, Fairdale, Louisiana. Make sure you listen to their sister station as well, 104.7 The Gator. Big hello to our friends at WAUD, home of the Atlanta Braves, the world champion Atlanta Braves over in Auburn, Alabama. And speaking of Atlanta, 99.1 FM WDJY. Thanks for tuning in there, as well as Hotel Television, Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Wow Cable, everybody streaming. Also on the Mars Rover. Thanks for joining us here with the great Thom Brennman. 30 years in the play-by-play business. Thom, you've kind of done it all. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Sal.
Sorry about that long intro. I have to mention Curry Leaf because the food is so damn good. I'll be there tonight too. Absolutely. So starting out at a school very popular for sports. A lot of people don't know this. Ohio University is the place to go if you're looking to enter the field for sports management, be an executive in the sports world, whatever. How'd you find yourself over at Ohio U?
Well, I grew up in Ohio and grew up in Cincinnati after we moved here. And I always wanted to go to the University of North Carolina. My mom and dad both went there. And before we had moved to Cincinnati, we were living in North Carolina and then Virginia Beach, Virginia and all. And my dad and mom and sister and I used to go at least to one or two North Carolina basketball games every year, going way back. George Karl was my all-time favorite player. And I saw him in the campus bookstore one day when we were back there. And I had hoped that that's where I would go, but I couldn't get in. I just wasn't a good enough student to get in. And so I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do. So it's not like I just chose Ohio University because I think you could get into broadcasting. Their Scripps Journalism School of Broadcasting is one of the best in the country. The program you're talking about is the Sports Administration Department, which is actually a master's degree. They get like 8,000 applicants a year, and they accept 50 kids into their master's program. But anyway, so I wound up getting into Ohio University, and with every intention of going there maybe for a year or two and trying to see if I could transfer to North Carolina. Once I got to OU, wouldn't have left for the world, loved every minute of it, and got out of there. And while I was going to school, I had a chance to work. My parents and I had an agreement that since I was fortunate enough where my mom and dad could spend money to send my sister and me to college, that there would be no call home for money. We're sending you a check, blah, blah, blah. That wasn't the deal. So you bust your tail all summer, find a job. And it just so happens that once I decided my sophomore year, that's what I wanted to get into, I actually got a job, wasn't on the air initially, at the only commercial radio stations. Athens is a very small town in southeast Ohio. Joe Burrow, strangely enough, is from there. That's where he went to high school, at Athens High School. And I got a chance to work at the radio station. So I was making money, getting experience. And by the time I got out of there, I had DJ'd, done a radio talk show, and announced the Ohio University women's basketball games on radio. So it all turned out great.
But Thom, you had that golden voice for the microphone. It wasn't an accident. It was supposed to be. You just didn't see it yet in your cards.
Well, thank God for that. It's funny because when at the end of my freshman year, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And the job that I had every summer was down in the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I lived with my grandparents down there, and a good friend of theirs owned a grocery store. And I was working probably 60 hours a week, 65 hours a week to try to save up money and all that kind of thing during the summer. Not a bad place to do it, Nags Head, North Carolina. But it was in the drive down there. I was by myself. I left directly from Athens, Ohio, and jumped in the car to drive down to North Carolina. I had been up like a lot of students, 3, 4, 5 days studying for exams, no sleep, caffeine, nonstop. And I got about 3 hours into the ride, and I was somewhere in West Virginia, and I turned on the radio, and Don Criqui, legendary voice, NBC and everything, great career, great broadcaster. He was doing a radio sports update for some affiliate, NBC radio affiliate of some station in West Virginia. And he had said, well, last night in the National League East, whatever it was, said, the Cubs leapfrogged the Mets to go into first place, blah, blah, blah. That's back when the Cubs played in the National League East. You remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought to myself, boy, that's like the first time I can ever remember, not that I knew everything about sports yet, but I didn't, but I certainly followed it closely enough where something like that I probably would have known under normal circumstances. And I just thought, wow, okay, maybe that's something that I want to do. I like knowing what's going on in sports. I like, following sports. And so thank God it turned out, moving in that direction, and everything could not have turned out better since then.
It's funny. When I was a kid, my father always knew he could ask me a sports question because I couldn't remember to throw the garbage out, right?
Right.
But I could remember the stats of this or that, or the rules for this penalty or that, whatever it was. And so he called me, oh, you're like the Red Book. Damn it. You know everything. You think you know everything. I'm like, no, I just happened to follow it. And I had this very interesting relationship with my father, growing up in a Sicilian house in Chicago. Well, something tells me, we didn't really go camping, if you know what I mean. My old man, he took me. Oh yeah. He took me to the track. Right. So I learned,
Right.
So I learned how to read the racing form when I was 10 years old. I made my first bet at Arlington Park when I was 11 years old. Right. And this is what it was. While my friends were going up to Wisconsin or going to Michigan to the cabin, so to say, or down to Tennessee and go fish on a lake.
Right.
Oh, no. We had to learn how to hustle and make a buck. And that was it. Because if we weren't mowing lawns or raking leaves or shoveling snow, we were doing something, even placing bets at the local racetrack, whatever it was. So knowing things, whether it's sports, whether it's bloodlines within the sports, whether it's racing, it doesn't matter. You just have a thirst to know. And sports is addicting like that. Even if it's a sport you don't know much. I couldn't skate to save my life, but hockey is my favorite sport. And I could tell anybody anything about hockey for the last 20 years. And even with our hockey sidekicks that we've had on, multiple cup winners, we can have a conversation, a very in-depth one, about what actually happens on the ice, off the ice, and the same idea how basketball players have to keep their feet moving without the ball because it changes the dynamic of the game. So think about that in your ability to have that knowledge and speak about baseball and football on air. Thom, it's no accident. It seems like you were supposed to do this.
Well, you go back to when my dad got the Reds got the job with the Cincinnati Reds in 1974. Al Michaels was the play-by-play announcer for the Reds at the time. He had decided that he wanted to take the San Francisco Giants job, so my dad gets hired for the Reds. That's 74. Now, all of that had been right in the middle of the building of the Big Red Machine. And I'll never forget it. 74, we were still living in Virginia Beach. My dad had already moved up. My sister and my mom and me were waiting until school got out before we moved to Cincinnati. But we went down to spring training when the Reds used to train in Tampa, Florida, where the Yankees are now. The Reds were there forever. And I'd been to one Major League Baseball game in my life. I rode a Greyhound bus with my grandparents down to Atlanta, Georgia, a couple of years before, like 1972 or something. But I walk in the clubhouse, the Reds clubhouse in 1974. And the first four people that I'm introduced to are Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, and Tony Perez. I'm 10 years old.
Wow.
And
Holy crap.
I'd never seen the Reds. I knew who these guys were, especially Pete Rose and Johnny Bench. But
Right.
that started then, as fate would have it. I mentioned Bench and Rose because you fast forward from that moment on, 14 years later, I'm announcing the Reds games on television with Johnny Bench, and Pete Rose is the manager of the team before he was barred from Major League Baseball. I mean,
Wow.
yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
What a great story. Tell you what, we're going to have a lot more stories with the great Thom Brennman here in just a few minutes on the Circus. Lots more to come. You don't want to miss this one, folks. Back in a few.
You have to pay for the rights to this music?
Hello Americans, it's Uncle Sam here. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes to the IRS or state, don't worry. I've got important news that may help you negotiate a lower tax bill. In today's economy, the IRS has released a variety of new rules and is offering more flexible terms to help Americans looking to settle their IRS debt. If you apply today, we may be able to lift your wage garnishments and release a freeze on your bank assets or business. Our team of tax professionals can resolve your case and stop collection actions against you. Even if you've been audited or haven't filed a return in years, they can help. Call right now and find out if you qualify to settle your IRS debt for far less than what you owe. Pick up your phone right now and call us for a free $500 IRS tax review. Don't wait. Here's the number.
Call right now. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. For the last time, that's 800-950-2049.
If you served in the Marine Corps, by now you know about the contaminated water problem at Camp Lejeune. If you were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987, you probably have a lot of questions. We have some answers. You could be entitled to compensation. Billions of dollars are being allocated to pay for damages to anyone stationed at Camp Lejeune during that time. Unfortunately, it appears that officials may have known the contaminated water problem existed and did little to protect their men. The Semper Fi code was not honored. If you or someone in your family has developed a serious illness, including various forms of cancer, call this Camp Lejeune legal support line right now. You can't turn back the clock and change what happened, but you can certainly call right now and learn your rights as a Marine. Here's the number.
Call 800-335-7196. 800-335-7196. That's 800-335-7196. Paid for by Legal Alert Line.
Do you own a timeshare? Well, face the facts. You made a mistake. You made a bad purchase. A timeshare is not an investment. It's a money pit that continues forever. If you use your timeshare, that's great. But if you don't and you want to legally get out of your contract, call my friends right now at the Timeshare Exit Hotline. They're an experienced team of lawyers who help good people like you get out of a timeshare contract that they just don't want. Don't throw away your money on maintenance fees. Use it for things you really want. We can help you end your timeshare contract and stop the money drain immediately. If you're ready to move on with your timeshare, call our team right now.
Cancel your timeshare now. with a free call. 800-298-3173. 800-298-3173. 800-298-3173. That's 800-298-3173.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus with Bones from Al's Italian Beef. We're talking to Sal.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP TV. This segment brought to you in part by Cali Vegas, helping people create and host their very own radio, TV, or multimedia talk shows. Cali Vegas can help with everything they need to get out of sitting in hours of traffic, commuting back and forth to the same old boring job, and host their very own talk show in their very own home studio. For more information, contact Cali Vegas at 949-445-1119. That's 949-445-1119. Again, 949-445-1119. Or visit online for more information at calivegas.com. That's www.calivegas.com. All right, and welcome back to everybody. Without naming everything, it doesn't matter. It's going to take us 3 minutes into the segment. All right, back here with the great Thom Brennman. Thom, with a great story. I want to hear more about this when you were a kid and as you progressed. Yeah. Tell us about this. Give us a refresher on that, please.
Well, I was growing up around the Cincinnati Reds, and back in those days, Sal, it's so different than now. And I use that because of how my son more just because he's male and he was allowed to go in the locker room, let's say, for example, every blue moon. When I was a kid, it was ironic that the Reds policy during the 1970s and the Big Red Machine and back-to-back World Series champions and the biggest stars of the stars of the stars. I mean, every guy, you could make an argument for every guy in that starting lineup, except for Cesar Geronimo, should be in the Hall of Fame. From Bench to Perez, they are in. Morgan's in. Concepcion should be in. Pete Rose should be in, Ken Griffey Jr. or Ken Griffey Sr., George Foster was a league MVP. Geronimo in center field won 7 or 8 Gold Gloves. I mean, it was insane. And back in those days, I used to be able to, and I think about this for a second, right? My dad's announcing the Reds games. I was able to go into the clubhouse and onto the field whenever I went to the ballpark with him. I'd sit in Sparky Anderson's office while my dad would tape the pregame show every day. Sit there every day. Sparky's got his pipe going, and my dad's smoking cigarettes at the time, and I mean they're just hanging out in there, and then I could go out on the field, watch a team take batting practice. I was not allowed. No kids were allowed ever in the press box. So here, this whole time, if I ever went to the ballpark, I'd go down early with my dad, do the manager's show with Sparky Anderson, walk around the clubhouse, bench, and blah, 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 and go out in the field. And then when the game started, I couldn't even hang out with my dad. I'd have to go just like everybody else and just sit in the stands. But it was an incredible way to grow up. I even go back to when my dad was announcing in the old ABA before it merged, some teams merged into the NBA. And on the Virginia Squires team, which he announced, we had Julius Erving, his first 3 years out of college. We had George Gervin, one of the great players in the history of the NBA. And we had Charlie Scott, who was one of the great all-time players at North Carolina, had a phenomenal professional career, among other guys. Well, I was a ball boy for the visiting team. So I get off school, go down to the arena with my dad, and the Kentucky Colonels would come to town. Artis Gilmore and Dan Issel played for the Kentucky Colonels. And you could go right down the line of every single team and these guys. And I mean, I've been around those kinds of guys and the baseball players, my entire life. And it didn't matter. They were black, they were brown, they were Hispanic, they were Asian, they were whatever they were. To me, they were just regular guys. because they were just being nice to a kid who happened to be hanging around, and if not working a job, knew him a little bit. It was unbelievable. It was every kid's dream.
Great experience. Folks, by the way, in case you're just tuning in, we're here with the great Thom Brennman. You may recall him from calling, just about everything. Football, baseball, you name it, he's called it. And by the way, I have a fun little story. So I remember this when I'm coming home from school. I think I was about 9 years old. And so I would cut through, and now you were in Chicago calling the Cubs games for quite some time, right? And so I grew up in a place called Oak Park, right on the city's western border, right? A very, very popular place.
In the next town over. Yeah.
Which one? River Forest?
River Forest. Yeah. She's been there her whole adult life. Yeah.
Right. So the Oak Park Ford on Madison and Oak Park Avenue, one block west on Grove. I lived on Grove. And I used to cut through there and go to the water fountain. And I knew all the sales guys. Hey, here's that pesky kid coming in again, always coming in, because it was the coldest water fountain in town, if you know what I mean, right? On a warm summer day or whatever. It was always the best water fountain. Never mind the chemicals in the water, of course, if you know what I mean. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, so I go in there, and then one time I always went in the side entrance on Grove, and I walked in, the water fountain was right there. And then what I would do is I basically drench my face in it because it was kind of warm, right? And so I'm doing this, and everybody on TV can see me rubbing my face and whatnot. So one time I see this big smiling face. And I see this guy go, "Hey kid, come here." And so I look over my shoulder, right? I'm like, that guy talking to me? He looks kind of familiar. And so he goes, "Come here." He's waving me over. Everybody on TV can see this. He's waving me over. I'm like, okay. So I'm kind of gingerly walking over there, and my eyes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger as I get there. And it's Ernie Banks. It's Ernie Banks. I mean, as a kid, mind you, at this time, look, I'm a White Sox guy right now, make no mistake, but I was a Cubs and White Sox guy back then. And Ernie was in Chicago, the superstar's superstar. Yep. He was the guy, right? Let's play two. And he goes, "Come here, kid. I want to talk to you." And so he said, "Have a seat." And I'm sitting there with my eyes as big as saucers next to one of the greats of the game. And of course, in Chicago, we didn't really have a lot of greats like Yankees murderer row kind of guys, but we had guys like Ernie Banks. And so I'm sitting there with my eyes like a super fan, like today, right? But I'm 9 years old. What a great experience. I'm sitting there talking to Ernie Banks for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. And I have no clue what the entire dialogue was about. I was the proverbial Walt Disney, just with my deer in the eye, or deer in the light headlights eyes, right? And I didn't even know what to say except yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir. Yep. And he asked me if I play baseball, and I said, "Well, I try. I'm not very good." But it was a great experience for me. I couldn't imagine you growing up in the world you did around the greats. This is crazy.
Yeah, it was. And, there's a lesson there, I think. It doesn't matter whether it's your experience and getting to meet Ernie Banks in that situation, mine, where I got to do it frequently. But, the athlete has a choice to make. And this is where I got to know, years went by, and I started announcing I left the Cubs to go do the Arizona Diamondbacks games. And I'm living in Arizona, and I would see Charles Barkley working out at the gym every single day where I was going to work out. And I had never met him. Actually, I'd met him one time when he was still in Philadelphia, and he came into a Phillies game, and I said hello to him, and that was it. But I didn't know him. He didn't know me. And I would watch him, because right where you did all the cardio stuff, and he was always on the stair climber thing, you looked right out, and I would always see him over there in the morning. And in the summer, there would be a lot of kids playing basketball in that gym. Every single day, that guy would get off the machine. He'd go out there and spend anywhere from 5 minutes, sometimes an hour, of playing basketball with these kids or talking to these kids. He didn't have to do that. He could have walked right by them, walked out the door, gotten into his car, and gone home. But I always used to compare him and Michael Jordan, because Jordan would have walked by him. And I'm not beating up Michael Jordan. He's done a lot of great things for a lot of people, but he clearly got to a point in his life when he got in Chicago where there's probably a good chance that Sal, he would not have been the guy that talked to you like Ernie Banks did that day when you're washing off your face in the water fountain. Barkley, you can take it to the bank. He'd have done it. Ernie, I'm not surprised at all. I announced the Cubs games the 6 years I was there with Ron Santo, who became like a second father to me. And I loved him with all my heart and soul. And so I had a chance to meet Ernie and Billy Williams and Glenn Beckert and Randy Hundley and all Ferguson Jenkins, all those guys. And it's a lesson in there for all the athletes about the impression that you can make, whether it's on another adult or in your case, the impression you can make on a kid.
Yeah. And that date, it was the best day of my childhood.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't around like you. It was like me winning the lottery as a kid. I mean, what could have been better? Nothing could have been better on that day because it was my chance to sit and just be a googly-eyed kid and ask a couple of silly baseball questions from a 9-year-old kid. But it was my day of winning the lottery as a kid, if you know what I mean.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, that's great stuff. So, Thom, when we come back, listen, this is wide open. We can talk about anything we want to. That's the best part about doing what we do here because we don't have a prompter to read off of. We just cover whatever the heck we want to, whenever we want to. We just have to keep it clean, if you know what I mean. So we come back. I'm going to let you drive the bus in this one because you've done that, I don't know, how many years? 30 years? Something like that, maybe even more than that. We're going to be back here, folks, with the great Thom Brennman. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come here on the Sports Circus.
Attention business owners, you and your customers are listening to this commercial right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC sports affiliates across North America with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at 702-799-9935. Again, 702-799-9935. Or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.
If you are trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more.
800-957-6209. 800-957-6209. 800-957-6209. That's 800-957-6209.
Hey, this is Tommy John, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. How do you not love that music? I'm Thom, Brennman, Sal. Are you and I still together here? Are we good?
Yes, we're good.
All right, we're good. Good.
So, Thom, in case people have been living under a rock for the last 30 odd years, give everybody just a little taste of your background.
Got to start at Channel 5, an NBC affiliate in Cincinnati, was not on the air. And then a series of events took place. I became the weekend sports anchor. From there, it was a situation where Johnny Bench and Jay Randolph were doing the Reds games on our station. Each of them had to miss about 8 or 10 games over the course of a year. I filled in. 2 years later, applied for the Cub job, didn't tell anybody that I was applying, not my mom, not my dad, anybody. Wound up getting the job, which was just an incredible, thank God, incredible opportunity. And then that really springboarded everything off of that. WGN was a superstation, as you well know, but a lot of people may not remember. Cable outlets all over the country. You could watch the Cubs and the Braves, and in some cases, the Mets. They were the three superstations on every cable system in the country. Fox came along in 1994, got hired by them, one of the first 6 original play-by-play guys they had on the NFL. They brought in Pat Summerall and John Madden, and then a bunch of young guys after Dick Stockton and Matt Millen, Joe Buck and Kenny Albert and me and Kevin Harlan. And then left the Cubs to go to Arizona, continued to do the Fox. Fox got baseball, did the baseball playoffs, did the BCS national championship games 3 times, bunch of baseball playoffs, NFL for 24 years. So it was it's been an amazing journey. Thank God for every second of it.
You even did some video game work too, didn't you?
Yeah. I got a chance to do some of that originally with Microsoft. And then they got out of the baseball business, so to speak. And then Acclaim came along, which I was never a video game player, but people tell me that at the time, and even now, it was one of the best baseball video games ever made. But the company got into trouble because in one of their other games, I don't know if it was some war game or whatever it was, they buried some stuff underneath where, all of a sudden somebody clicked the wrong button. It wound up going out over, some, 15 or 12-year-old kids, and it shouldn't have been hearing as a 12-year-old kid. And the company got sued and they lost everything. So the baseball game and every other game they had disappeared. But that was a fascinating thing to go do, because you talk about a grind. That is if you have 1,500 players roughly in Major League Baseball at the time, you had to say every player's name 4 different ways with 4 different levels of enthusiasm. So I would sit down in a room at Microsoft, every player's name. And so Thom Brennman to the plate, Thom Brennman. Long, Thom Brennman with a great play defensively. I would have to say that and do that for all 1,500 players. It would take 3 days to, it was like, whew. But it was fun. It was fun to get a chance to do it.
That's good stuff. So when you're listening to somebody's broadcast, or when you're watching an event, whether it's sports, whether it's not, it doesn't matter. What is it that turns you off on that broadcast that makes you say, I can't listen to this anymore?
Well, if it's on television, one, too much talking. Radio is different, obviously. On television, too much talking. I think the other thing is just it's hard to describe. And maybe it's because I was so lucky growing up and being around sports my whole life. There are just moments in the game. It doesn't have to be, look, anybody can figure out if a game's in overtime or if the Super Bowl coming up this weekend gets in the fourth quarter and the Bengals get the ball down 3 and here comes Burrow trotting on the field. And, anybody can figure that out. That's the big moment. But there are moments in the course of a baseball game or a football game or a basketball game especially where there are just big moments. And you can really tell who has a good feel for the big moments and who doesn't. And that not only pertains to the play-by-play guy, it also pertains to the color guy, because there can be a really big moment in the game. Something may have just happened. And now this next trip, let's use basketball, this next trip down the floor is a huge possession in the game. Whether it's momentum, it's the crowd, it's the sway, the feel of the game. But the analyst is still talking about what happened on the other end of the court 30 seconds ago. Sometimes that's fine, but not when you're moving the other direction. And that's when the biggest moment of the game is getting ready to take place. It makes me crazy when I see, and look, I've been guilty of it too. Make no mistake about it. But I made a ton of mistakes and still make a ton of mistakes, but you can sense who are the guys that really kind of have a feel for the game and the sport and the medium when they're doing that sport.
Yeah. One of those things that a lot of people seem to hear about are when the color guy, now I saw this with one broadcaster in particular, to be nameless, of course, to protect the guilty. And I found that there was one color guy, he played for a particular team that I happen to like. And every time something happened on the field, when he was adding color to the broadcast, he would always relate it to him. I remember doing this in the outfield.
Yeah.
Right. If you put 2 and 2 together, you'll know who I'm talking about. And the fact that, and he's still in the game today, but he always relates it back to him instead of the game. Let's talk about the game. We don't need to hear about your career. I mean, hey, congratulations. You played Major League Baseball, but I want to hear what it's like from playing a position, or what is the other team? How are they going to necessarily respond, or possibly a lack thereof? Tell me more. Right. Add some color to the broadcast instead of talking about yourself.
It's interesting you bring that up because Joe Morgan used to take a lot of heat for talking about him being in certain situations frequently when he was doing that old Sunday night baseball game with John Miller. They made a great team.
Oh,
and
what a great broadcast that
met,
was.
Yeah, and of all the people I ever met, maybe in my entire life, I've never met a more impressive human being than Joe Morgan. Everything he did, he was the very best at it. He was the very best player. He was the very best color analyst. When he went into business, he was the best owner of Wendy's franchises. When he went into beer distributorship, he was the best owner of Coors franchises. This guy was he was an amazing man, beautiful man. But one of the things for all the people that used to give him a hard time about what you just referred to, and he did it a lot, but what he also did, which gives you an idea about the savvy of Morgan that you don't hear from a lot of guys, including the guy that you were just talking about, is the easiest thing in the world for Joe Morgan to fall back on would be, okay, you're the batter in this situation, and runners at first and second, nobody out. But Joe so frequently would say, I remember a conversation I had with Bob Gibson about being in this position. I remember having a conversation with Randy Johnson about what he's thinking about with first and second, nobody out. What is he thinking is he thinking damage control? Is he thinking I'm so good, there's no way they're going to score on me? And then he would also bring that down to not just the Bob Gibsons and Randy Johnsons. They're Hall of Famers, like Joe Morgan's a Hall of Famer. But he might bring it down and dumb it down to a guy who's just trying to hang on in his major league career that he talked to about this exact same thing 3 days before. I remember, or 30 years before. We had this guy on our team, and a lot of you have maybe never heard this guy, but he was a good pitcher, but he only hung around in big leagues for 3 years. And man, he used to say, first and second, nobody out. I'm in a lot of trouble. But so you get the point I'm making here. He's not just talking about himself. He's trying to put himself in the position of the person that he would normally be going against in a particular situation, which I think really adds a lot of flavor and color to a broadcast.
Yeah, Joe was bringing perspective, not his, but it was from a wider audience viewpoint. And I'm okay with that. That was, in my opinion, that was one of my best broadcasting duos that I've ever heard. I mean, of course, I always go back to the old Harry Carey and Jimmy Pearsall, right? So I'm going way back in the time machine. So listen, Thom, we've got a couple of minutes left. And if there's anything that you want to get out there, people to follow you, et cetera, that now is a good time to do it, or just talk about something that's interests you for the next couple of minutes.
Well, I do a podcast, as I mentioned, Sal, and it's called Dialed In with Thom Brennman. Dialed In with Thom Brennman, and we've had some fabulous guests, just like your show does. Everybody from Urban Meyer to Bob Costas to Jerry Colangelo, former owner of the Arizona Diamondbacks and Phoenix Suns, to Joe Buck, Troy Aikman. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And so that's been going on for about a year now. But, where I live here in Cincinnati, and we are really excited about this Super Bowl. The town, it's been so cool to see a town that's been starved for a long, long time of having a team put in this position. And it's really exciting. And I'll throw you on the spot. Is this going to air before the Super Bowl or not? Probably not, right? All right, well, then let's play hindsight's 2020. We're taping this before it airs. Who do you think wins the Super Bowl? You got a prediction?
Cincinnati 35-31. So everybody's going to hear this. Everyone's going to hear this after this broadcast. And if you just tuned in late, get over it. Yeah, I happen to believe I think the Bengals are going to get theirs. They wanted a crack at San Francisco because they didn't want to be 3-time loser to San Francisco. But I don't know. I mean, look, pound for pound, I'm sorry. You're going to see a double up. And of course, this is after the game. Everybody's going to hear this after the game. I'm going to imagine that Cooper Kupp is doubled up. And frankly, Stafford's got no one else to throw to. You got a very average Beckham at this point. He's not the New York Giants Beckham. But you've got 3 receivers on Cincinnati that are damn good, and you got a bruising back. You don't have that with the Rams.
Yeah, I just think it's just been so exciting, and the Burrow kid is just, I mentioned earlier, is from a little town, Athens, Ohio, where I went to school at Ohio University, and going back to when he first started at Ohio State, getting the chance to play there, he goes to LSU, and at his Heisman Trophy speech, he stands up and talks about the kids that he played with in Athens County, which is Appalachia. I mean, there's no question about it. And raised $700,000 for the Athens County Food Bank just from that Heisman Trophy. This kid, he is just so impressive, and I hope he can bring it home for him. We'll see how it works out.
That's good stuff. All right, everybody, if you just heard all that, guess what? Don't worry about it because we already know what the results of the game is. All right. Thanks for Thom Brennman joining us today. Nice round of applause for Thom. And of course, you're always back here. You're welcome back on the circus anytime. We'd love to have you back.
Thanks for having me, Sal. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourself.
Sounds great. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you right here on your favorite station in 23 hours. So long, everyone.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.